Part 3, the Most Blessed Mother describes her 7 sorrows to Catalina.
Many prophets spoke about me. They prophesied that it was necessary for me to suffer to become worthy of being the Mother of God. On earth they advanced knowledge of me, but, as it was meant to be, in a very veiled way. Later the evangelists spoke of me, especially Luke, my beloved physician, more of souls than of bodies. Afterwards some devotions were started that had as a basis the sorrows and pains suffered by me. And thus it is commonly believed and thought that I experienced 7 main sorrows. My children, your mother has rewarded and will reward the efforts and love that you have had for me. But as Jesus did, I want to talk to you more extensively about my sorrows. Then, you will talk about them to other brothers and sisters, and everyone at last will now imitate me. Because of what I suffered, I am continuously praising Jesus, and I seek nothing more than for Him to be glorified in me. Look, little children, it is sad to talk about these things to my own children, because every mother keeps her sorrows to herself. And this I dutifully did in the course of my mortal life, therefore, my wish as a mother has already been respected by God. Now that I am here, where the smile is eternal, and having already concealed like all mothers the sorrows that I experienced, I should talk about them so that as my children you may know something about my life. I know the fruits that you will gain from it, and as they are pleasing to Jesus, my beloved Son. I will talk about them as soon as you can understand me. My Jesus said, "Whoever is first, make yourself last," and He truly did so, because He is first in the house of God, but He lowered Himself unto the lowest step. Now, because of love, I will not take away from Him this first and last place that belongs to Him. Rather, I strive to make you understand this truth, and my joy will be much greater when you are convinced, not through the path of simple knowledge but by means of a profound and deeply rooted conviction. May He be first and all of us truly be last. If He was first, there should be a second one in the scale of love and glory and, therefore, of lowliness and humiliation. You have now understood. That being should be me. Little children, praise God, who even having established an enormous distance between Jesus and me, still wanted to place me immediately next to Him. My children, what appears to the world is not what is most important before God. Having been chosen Mother of God involved for me grave sacrifices and resignations, and the first was this: knowing through Gabriel the election made in the intimacy of God. I had wanted to remain in a state of humble knowledge and concealment in God. I wanted this more than anything else because it was my delight to know that I was last in everything. Upon knowing the choice of God, I answered, "As you know," but it consisted of so much for me to rise to the dignity to which I was called. Little children, do you understand this first sorrow of mine of which I speak? Reflect on it. Give your mother the great delight of holding in esteem that humbleness which I so much admired above my virginity. Yes, I was and I am the slave to whom every request may be made, and I accepted only because my surrender was in the same degree as my love. It pleased you, O God, to elevate me to you, and it pleased me to accept because my obedience was pleasant to you. But you know how sorrowful it was for me, and that same sorrow is now before you, required as light for these children, whom you love and whom I love. I am the slave, O children of mine, and as it was done unto me, let it now, without doubt, be done unto you all that God wants. The acceptance gave God the answer that will give men access to the redemption, and in this was verified that admirable phrase, "Here is a virgin who shall conceive and give birth to a son who will be called Emmanuel." My having accepted to become the mother of Emmanuel, involved my gift to the Son of God so that His mother would give of herself to Him before the humanity of Jesus would form in me. That is why my gift was the result of grace, but also the cause of grace. And the precedence should be recognized that God is the foremost cause. Nevertheless, it should be affirmed that my acceptance acted on the level of grace as a concomitant cause. They call me co-redemptrix because of the sorrows I have suffered, but I was so, even before, because of the gift I had made through Gabriel. Oh, my divine Son! how much honor you have wanted to give your mother in compensation for the great sorrow I suffered in rising to the dignity of your mother. Little children, you are in sightless world, but when you see, wondrous things will be inducements for you to rejoice for me. You will see what unity of glory and humility there is here where my Jesus is the Son that is never hidden. You will see what a wise design was carried out through what I gave up, to the lowliness of being hidden. But now, hear me. As my maternity was advancing, I had to talk to some of my loved ones and I told them about it while hiding as much as I could of the honor that I had received. I lamented having relinquished the secret about God's triumph because God Himself was to be glorified in me. However, very soon I had the joy of knowing that I was regarded as a woman amongst so many. My soul rejoiced because in the eyes of the world, the slave of God who longed for humiliations as only I could long for, was trampled upon. When Joseph hid himself, I did not suffer, but I truly rejoiced. Do not say that I suffered then because that is not true. That was how God satisfied my desire for humiliations. This was my compensation from the Lord, for having become the mother of God, to be considered as a fallen woman. Daughter, learn the wisdom of love, learn to esteem holy humility, and do not fear because it is a virtue that shines with sparkling light. When the nuptials took place, I had no problems. I knew how things would be and I feared nothing. Indeed, God grants perfect peace to those who give themselves entirely to Him in the most paradoxical situations, as was mine. I was forced by human dictates to marry a man, yet knowing that I could only belong to God. I suffered so many sorrows on earth. It is not easy to become the mother of the Most High, I assure you. But neither can everything one does out of the purest motive and to please God, be called difficult. Remember that. Have you ever thought what it was that caused me the most sorrow on that holy night in Bethlehem? You distract the mind with the stable, with the manger, with the poverty. I, on the other hand, tell you that I spent that night in complete ecstasy about my son. And even though I had to do what every mother does with her little child, I did not abandon my ecstasy, my rapture. And so, the only thing that caused me sorrow that night of love was seeing how my poor Joseph suffered, seeking shelter for me, any place at all. Aware of everything that was to happen and of the one who was to come into the world, my beloved husband, on seeing my confusion became anguished and I felt much sympathy for him. Later, we were both filled with joy and we forgot all our anguish. We fled to Egypt and all that is possible has been said about this, even though there are some who focus their imagination more on the fatigue of the journey than upon the fear of a mother who knew that she possessed the greatest treasure in heaven and on earth. Later, living in Nazareth, little Jesus was growing up full of life and, at that time, He caused us only the slightest and most minimal worry. Every mother knows what it is like to wish for the health of her own child, and how a very simple thing looks like a great dark cloud. My child went through all the epidemics and childhood illnesses of those times. Like every mother, I could not be protected from any of the anxieties that a mother's heart experiences. But one day the truly dark cloud that darkened the festive light of the Mother of God arrived. That cloud is called losing Jesus. No poet or master of the Spirit could possibly imagine Mary when she knows that she has lost her well-adored Son and when she has no news of Him until 3 days later. Little children, do not be amazed at my words. I experienced the greatest confusion of my life. You have not reflected enough on those words of mine, Son, your father and I have been looking for you for 3 days. Why have you done this to us? My God, now that I speak to these beloved children, I cannot stop praising you. You who hid yourself to make us experience the delight of finding you. Oh! How else could one possibly come to know the sweetness that a glassful of honey places in the soul when she embraces her everything? Now you see, I also speak to you about my joys, but not without reason do I relate and join together joys and sorrows. You should draw benefit as best you can from everything that happened. God conceals Himself in order to be found. Some know this truth, others thinking about that dreadful sorrow of having lost Jesus, may do everything to find him. You should not remain incapable of acting and disheartened. Your mother would like to save you from dealing with so much that remains to be told. First, there are things that have never been told and for that reason, not yet appreciated. Secondly, by getting to know them, you will have to join me in suffering and in painful thoughts. Moreover, everything that my Jesus wants, has been told without any opposition. Do you think that I spent family life in Nazareth peacefully? It was peaceful by virtue of the uniformity with the will of God. But from the creatures, there was so much trouble. Our unique way of living was noticed, and as a result we were ridiculed publicly. I was considered excessive for the sole fact that whenever Jesus left the house, I could not contain my tears, and Jesus went away frequently. Joseph was harassed as if he were a slave to Jesus and me. How could the world possibly understand? We abandoned all worry to the one who lived amongst us, adored in all his manifestations. What a beloved son that young boy was, more handsome than the sea, wiser than Solomon, and stronger than Samson. All the mothers would have snatched him away from me, such was the charm that surrounded him. The small-minded governed me with soothing judgments, however, they did not spare criticism of the tireless father whom they thought was subject to his faithful but jealous wife. Everyone recognized my integrity, but they all thought it to be a common and selfish passion. This, my little children, is what is not known. This happened in the midst of a world that could not see or understand, and his mother most pure. Jesus kept quiet, without encouraging me, because the Mother of God had to go through the crucible, that is, as one woman amongst many about whom opinions should not be spared. Admire the wisdom of God in these things and find that divine meaning, which joins the greatest of sublimity with the trials that are more painful in relation to such sublimity, because every abyss summons another abyss and every profundity summons its profundity. The hour of separation arrived, the hour for action of Jesus. With it arrived the feared day of his departure from Nazareth. Jesus had spoken quite extensively to me of his mission and of the fruits that it would give to him in everyone. He had made me love it beforehand. It was necessary, therefore, for us to separate, even if for a short time. He said goodbye, kissed us, and headed towards his mission as teacher of humanity. But his departure did not go unnoticed in the small village where Jesus was so loved. There were demonstrations of affection, of blessings, and even though they really did not know what good Jesus was going to do, just the same a loss was foreseen by these people of little intellect but after all, of generous heart. And I, in the midst of so many manifestations, how did I feel? So much affection welled up in me, but he did not delay his departure by a minute. My Jesus knew what awaited him after his preaching. He had spoken to me about it so many times and so profusely of the treachery of the Pharisees and the others. And now you see him leaving, departing like that alone and without me to fulfill his mandate, without me who had made him grow with the warmth of my heart, without me who adored him like no one would ever adore him. Later I followed him. I found him when he was surrounded by so many people that it was impossible for me to see him. And he, truly the Son of God, gave his mother a sublime response as was his wisdom but which pierced this maternal heart from through and through. Yes, I understood him completely, but that did not spare me from sorrows. It is true, through the human relationship he countered the divine one in which I was included, but nevertheless, the remarks of others did not fail to hurt me. The initial blow was followed by the joy of witnessing his greatness, of seeing him honored, venerated, and loved by the people. Thus quickly this wound also healed. I traveled the roads with him, enthralled by his knowledge, comforted by his teachings, and I never tired of loving and admiring him. Then arrived his first friction with the Sanhedrin. The miracle occurred that caused so much fuss in the minds of the Jews, of their arrogant priests. He was hated, persecuted, spied upon, and tempted. And I knew everything, and from then on, with outstretched hands, I offered into the hands of the Father, the holocaust of my Son, his surrender, and his horrible and ignominious death. I already knew about Judas, I knew the tree from which the wood would be taken for my son's cross. You cannot imagine the intimate tragedy that I lived through together with my Jesus, in order for the redemption to be fulfilled. I have said before, co-redemptrix. For that to be, the usual sorrows were not enough. A more intimate union with his great suffering was necessary, so that all mankind should be redeemed. So, as I went from town to town with him, I became more and more aware of the inconsolable tears shed by my son on so many sleepless nights that he spent in prayer and meditation. Every state of his mind was revealed and placed before me, and certainly that began my Calvary and my cross. So many considerations increased my sorrows each day that I was his mother and yours. So many sins, all the sins, so much sorrow, all the sorrows, so many thorns, all the thorns. Jesus was not alone. He knew it, and felt it. He witnessed his mother continuously in union with him. He was afflicted by it, even more so, because my suffering was for him the greatest suffering. My son, my adored son, if only these children knew what happened then between you and me. And the hour of the Holocaust arrived, after the sweetness of the Paschal Supper. And from then on, I had to rejoin the crowd. I, who loved and adored him in a unique way, had to be far from him. Do you understand, oh my children? I knew that Judas was taking his treacherous steps and there was nothing I could do, and I knew that Jesus had shed blood in the garden and there was nothing I could do for him. And then they seized him, abused him, insulted him, and wickedly condemned him. I cannot tell you everything. I will only tell you that my heart was in turmoil with continuous anxiety, a seat of continuous bitterness and uncertainty, a place of desolation, dejection, and affliction. And the souls that would later be lost? And all the acts of simony and sacrilegious exchanges? O children of my sorrows! If today you are granted the grace of suffering for me, with fervor, bless the one who granted it to you, and without hesitation, sacrifice yourselves. You think about my grandeur, my beloved children. It helps you to think about it, but listen to me, do not think about me, but about him. I would like to be forgotten, if it were possible. Give all your compassion to him, to my Jesus, to your Jesus, to Jesus, your love and mine. Thus, little children, the sorrow in my heart was a sword continuously piercing my soul, my life, through and through. I felt it, while Jesus did not. He comforted me with his resurrection, when my immense joy suddenly healed all the wounds that bled within me. My son, I kept repeating. Why so much affliction? Your mother is near you. Is not even my love enough for you? How many times did I comfort you in your afflictions? And now, how is it that not even your mother can give you some relief? O Father of my Jesus, I want nothing more than what you want. You know it, but see if so many afflictions can have some relief. The mother of your Son asks this of you. And now on Calvary I cried out, my God, cause to return to those eyes that I adore the light that you imprinted in them since the day that you gave him to me. Divine Father, see the horror of that holy face. Can you not at least wipe away so much blood? O Father of my Son, O my beloved spouse, O you who have desired to take your humanity from me. May those arms, opened up to heaven and earth be a prayer, may they be the supplication for the acceptance of him and of me. See, O God, what the one whom you love has been reduced to. It is his mother who asks you to alleviate so much sadness. After a short time, I will be left without him. Thus my vow which I offered wholeheartedly in the temple will be entirely fulfilled. Yes, I will remain alone, but lighten his pain without paying attention to mine,